On Thursday, September 21st, 5 members of a recently formed State Commission on Climate Action, designed to develop a plan to help reach the state's renewable energy and greenhouse gas emissions reductions goals, made a stop in Manchester as part of a listening tour the Commission is making, to hear from Vermonters from around the state about what steps the state should be taking to balance economic growth with climate change. The Commission heard from an overflow crowd at the Hunter Seminar Room in Burr & Britton Academy. It was their second stop in the listening tour, an earlier one having been held in St. Johnsbury, and 2 more coming up, one in St. Albans and another in Brattleboro. Peter Walk, the chairman of the commission, talked about its mission at the start of the meeting.
Is get to the action part. What do you want us to recommend to the governor? What do you want us to work with our legislators who are here and the other ones in Montpelier to get working on? We're all here because we want to do something. So I would preface it with that point.
Under the terms of the executive order issued by Governor Phil Scott earlier this year, the Commission has to make recommendations for how the state's ambitious renewable energy goals will be achieved. Those include making a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from 1990 levels by the year 2030, and a further reduction of another 40 to 50% from there by the year 2050, along with meeting 90% of the state's energy needs from renewable sources by the year 2050. Reaching these goals should be harnessed to boosting economic activity and making Vermont a more affordable place to live. According to the governor's executive order, the overriding message from many members in the audience was the desirability of a carbon tax on carbon emissions. Put a price on it, a slogan favored by many of the nearly 50 speakers who made their way to the podium to address the commissioners, refers to placing a tax on carbon-based energy sources like propane, coal, oil, and other fossil fuels, which emit carbon particles into the atmosphere and are widely considered to have an impact on climate change and global warming trends.
Obviously, I support a tax on carbon. I've been asking and pleading for this for years because we humans suffer from inertia of comfort. And we're preaching to the choir here, but the people whose lives and hearts and minds we need to change are sitting on the recliner in front of their television watching reality TV right now. And they will not change their ways unless it costs them more money.
A carbon tax is not a new idea and leans to a degree on market forces to achieve its goal of reduced carbon emissions. The idea is straight from classical economics. If a price tag is too high, consumers will use less of it. Speaker after speaker hammered home that idea with varying degrees of emphasis, along with the need to quickly reduce carbon emissions.
There's a study by the International Organization of Physicists, and there's a logarithmic scale that shows that from $10 to $100 applies to coal and natural gas power plants. From $100 to $1,000, you have passenger cars and light trucks. And then up in that upper range, you have freight vehicles, which would be diesel. That's gasoline, now diesel, at around $500 to $800 per ton. In order to have a change in behavior there, it's not behavior; it's a matter of changing out the investments. And then to get to ships and airplanes and boats, and locomotives are in there, you need to get up to around $8,000 per ton to give an incentive. So a $35 or $50 per ton is not going to work except for power plants. And they're already going out of business without the carbon tax.
I teach my students that climate change is one of the most threatening issues facing our world today, and that we must act now or it will be too late. And I believe that carbon pricing is our best option to both reduce greenhouse gas emissions while also helping Vermont's economy. This is an urgent crisis that calls for more aggressive measures, and putting a price on carbon is my recommendation for moving forward in the most viable way. We can't wait any longer.
Tony DuPont of Manchester is one of the few who offered an analysis that differed from that from most of the other speakers.
The climate change has always been changing, but the question is carbon really causing it? So I dug into that a little bit, and one of the things I saw was a plot of changes above and below the average temperature for the last 150 years. And it correlates almost perfectly with the solar activity. And it doesn't correlate at all with carbon dioxide. And just for the record, there's been times in the past millions of years ago, when the carbon dioxide in the air was 25 times more than it is now. So my recommendation is that somebody said the government should, secretary or somebody that would look at the science and the situation. I recommend that they take a deeper look and see if we really have a crisis caused by carbon dioxide or not. Thank you.
Weatherization. How do we pay for weatherization? We have very old housing stock in Vermont. We need to help our population weatherize. If we put a price on carbon pollution, we can put that on the list of one of the possible things that we could do. Thank you very much for allowing me.
Thank you very much.
After the meeting, Walk and several others attending it gave their reactions and takeaways from the discussion.
Hear different things. I think what we've heard from all the two that we've done so far, and what I expect to hear from every corner of the state, is a desire for people to see us act, to recommend actions rather than to, as Bill said, file another report on the shelf. And that's consistent throughout. It's about economic transformation, that we can have economic development that is supportive of these goals. But we need to be thinking about things differently, and we need to be thinking about lots of things moving forward. But there's opportunity for the prosperity of Vermont to increase while we address this issue.
The Commission has to develop and file its report with the Governor's Office by the end of July 2018. For the GNAT TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.